And the truckers, who were peaceful, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just honked their horns. There were some parking violations, I grant you that. And they honked their horns. The Canadian government brought in martial law, the Emergencies Act, which had not even been used during 9/11. And they deployed riot horses. They seized bank accounts without legal process. I believe that if we had a First Amendment, that wouldn't happen. Now, by the way, later on, about a year later, our federal court said, okay, that was unconstitutional, even under the Wiggle Room Charter. But Canada does not have the culture of freedom that Chris was talking about. You've got to have that in your law schools, your law professors, your judges, your lawyers. And it's such a battleground in America right now. Like, who is the boss? These district court judges or Donald Trump? But it's not just Donald Trump. It's Trump, the winner of the election. Or can any one of 600 district judges veto him? In some ways, that's more powerful than a Supreme Court judge because they got to work in packs of 9.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, so to have that culture of freedom in your law is so important. And the bad guys have had a long march through the institutions.
Yeah, I mean, the articulation in the First Amendment in the United States where it says Congress shall make no law, that is impactful. And I think that most Americans don't think about how important that language is because it's our Constitution puts the people before the government. And I don't know that I'm not familiar enough with other countries to say whether or not that's the case, but it sounds clearly like in Canada, the government gave itself room to violate whatever laws and rulings it wanted right in the first clause. And in the U.S., like I said, it says Congress shall make no law. And that language is extremely important.
And the Patriot Act did a lot of damage to us as well.
Well, there's times where, yes, I agree completely. And there's times where we've fallen short, but we have generally been pretty good about correcting the errors as well. That's another thing that I think that, again, this is not in any way trying to say that any of the violations of our Constitution are okay, but by and large, we've been pretty good about correcting them. There's a couple things that jumped to the top of my mind that they haven't managed to fix yet here in the U.S. Like, for instance, civil asset forfeiture that goes against the due process clause. The government can just take your stuff and say, well, we think that you're in the business of dealing drugs or whatever, so we're going to take your stuff. And then instead of actually having a court case against you, they have a court case against your inanimate object stuff. If you're traveling with cash, well, we can just take this. And so that's one of the more egregious things, but there really are only a few that don't get corrected. And we've had some significant fights. I think of Skokie, Illinois, the Supreme Court saying that it's acceptable for Nazis to demonstrate in a mostly Jewish town, which is, I don't think that, I'm not sure that would stand today in the United States. And I know that it wouldn't stand anywhere else in the world, but those kind of precedents, they matter here in the U.S. and like you said, it does speak to the culture that we have here.
I do think that there was a concerted effort after the Patriot Act was passed to remove that culture, not just in the institutions, but amongst the citizenry, to get them, what was the saying was always like, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what the heck are you worried about? And that was something that was instilled in, whether it was millennials, for the sake of safety and their parents and Gen X, that they wanted you to believe that, in the name of safety, getting rid of those founding principles is okay because we're the government, we're not going to abuse it. And that's something that I think they underestimated just how much the love of those beliefs truly did run in the country.
I hate that phrase because they always redefine what's wrong.
Yeah, well, exactly.
They always move the goalposts. And I remember seeing the breakdown in Canada with free expression during the compelled speech argument. That was insane. What was that, Bill C-16 or something?
C-17.
Yeah, it's crazy. How was that, dealing with that?
Well, that's getting worse than ever.
Really?
And now judges are being trained in that. So once the judges are being trained with that ideology, how do you even have a fair hearing?
Well, the institutions are captured.
Can I tell you one of the things I love about America?
Of course.
It's a 1971 court case. And in some ways, it feels like the apex of freedom of speech. I'm going to swear here. There was a fellow who went into a court in California with a shirt that said, "Fuck the draft." And he was found in contempt, and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, one man's profanity is another man's lyric. They said he needed to say the F word because that is what captured the depth of his emotions. He didn't want to say, ew, excuse me, I do object to the draft. He needed to say, no, fuck the draft.
Right.
And imagine a Supreme Court saying no to a lower court. You must accept a man saying fuck the draft on his shirt. Like that is so far out there, but isn't that America?
Yep.
Ain't that America?
What is the Canadian public's view on these types of things? Like as a whole, like what does the citizenry feel of these types of things? Do they care as much as Americans do?
I'm afraid that, Canadians probably think, well, we're more polite, so we would not accept that. Yeah. Well, that's a soft tyranny. I go to the UK from time to time. I follow the case of a journalist and activist named Tommy Robinson, who is in solitary confinement right now because a judge ordered him not to post a video to Twitter, and he did anyways. 9 months in solitary.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.